أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome. Today, we're going to journey together into the Quranic story of the people of Lut. But we're not just looking at it as history. We're going to see how it acts as this timeless mirror for the human heart.
You know, the interesting thing is, this story doesn't start with some big, sudden disaster. It actually begins with something much quieter, much more subtle. A community that just stopped listening to the warnings they were given. So you have Prophet Lut, and he's warning them. He's trying to get them to see the consequences of their actions, the fundamental, divine laws they were breaking. But they just dismissed him. And this wasn't just a simple disagreement, it was a deep, deep rejection of their own inner compass. And this is where their inner state, what was really going on inside, comes to the surface. It's revealed when they try to harm the angelic guests of Prophet Lut. That single moment shows a total collapse of conscience, and it's what leads to a kind of spiritual blindness. The consequence? A storm of stones, a really powerful physical symbol of all their inner chaos. But here's the key part, the really beautiful part. Notice when deliverance comes for Lut and his family at dawn. That moment signifies a new beginning, clarity, and an escape from the darkness they had created for themselves. Now that outer story is powerful, for sure. But the Sufi masters, they always teach us to look deeper, right? They encourage us to ask, okay, but what's the inner message here? What is this story saying about my own soul? And when we start looking at it that way, all those key elements in the story, the prophet, the guests, the storm, they suddenly become these incredible metaphors for our own inner world. So in this spiritual reading, Lut isn't just a prophet in some ancient story. He represents that voice of moral clarity that we all have inside us. Al-Qushayri beautifully calls him the light of Furqan, that inner knowing, that discernment that helps us separate truth from falsehood. And the guests? Well, they're not just visitors. They symbolize those pure thoughts, those little sparks of inspiration that just visit our hearts. As Najm al-Din Kubra puts it, they are inspirations from the real, from the divine. And he says that to violate them is to violate our own honor. Now, when we consistently ignore or harm these inner guests, the verse says their eyes were blinded. Of course, this isn't talking about physical sight. It's pointing to something much deeper, a spiritual condition where we can no longer see the truth because our own desires have become our only guide, our only reality. And that devastating storm, well, that's the unavoidable inner result of ignoring our conscience. That storm is the moral confusion. It's the chaos in our relationships, the total collapse of our spiritual direction when we've lost our inner bearings. You know, it's absolutely remarkable when you think about it. This ancient wisdom perfectly describes what modern psychology now calls moral disengagement. It's that slow process of justifying our actions until something that once really bothered us starts to feel completely normal. The Qur'an laid out the mechanics of this internal process centuries ago. So, here we are. This is the crucial point. How do we apply this mirror to our own lives? Because the Qur'an doesn't just leave this as a distant story. It turns the question right back to us. So let's just take a moment and ask ourselves, really honestly, in what parts of my life have I let my inner compass just spin, without any real direction? Think about those noble impulses, those sacred guests of the heart. Which ones have I pushed away? You know, maybe in favor of choices that just felt a little easier or a little more satisfying in the moment. And maybe the most important question of all, if I look really closely, are my choices being shaped by my highest values, or are they being shaped by my most insistent desires? You see, the profound lesson in this story is that the outer storm doesn't just appear out of nowhere in the sky. It starts quietly, right inside the heart, long before any stones start to fall. And this brings us to a final personal reflection, a sort of prayer, a munajat, to ask for that same dawn of clarity in our own lives. O Allah, protect my heart from desires that distort truth. Let me honor the noble impulses you send to me, lift the blindness I do not see, and bring me to the dawn of clarity before the storm arrives. Ameen.